Hello, hello. Let's get on with it. This is 1100 WSGI. I'm U-Turn LaVern, and yes, this is one street over. What's going on? One street over from where you live, and we are living right, as our county mayor likes to say. We are so blessed because we get to live and work in Robertson County. And I'm so excited because I have a guest coming down. I'm still signing on to my Facebook page, but we've got the WSGI page up. But I'm so excited to bring on my dear friend, Senator Kerry Roberts is with me this morning. It's been forever, brother. I am telling you, you've been so dabbling busy. Y'all are in session, and people forget that your job is a part-time job.
It is?
So, the senatorial job is.
It's supposed to be. I don't think it is, but it's supposed to be.
Well, but you also have other gigs. Yeah. And so you teach. What is it you do? You're like you teach all over the country.
Yes.
So that's what's been the conflict of getting him in here in the,
So, yeah. So I'm a certified public accountant.
Right.
And, in theory, being in the legislature is a part-time job. In theory, it's January to the end of April. So as I jokingly say, it's a full-time job with part-time pay. And that would be very true. Yeah. And because it is part-time pay and because I'm not independently wealthy, I have to do something else for a living. And as a CPA, you can't exactly walk into a CPA firm and say, oh, by the way, I can't work from, January to the end of April.
And time of the year.
So I went back into teaching many years ago. I taught at Lipscomb University, and but instead of teaching college students, I teach CPAs. And so if you're a CPA and you're licensed, you have to have 40 hours of continuing education every year in pretty much every state. And so I teach those classes, and I sometimes do it in person, which I'm traveling, and then sometimes I do it online, in which case I'm sitting at home talking to my computer for
Zoom.
8 hours, and which is why I may not answer the door or answer the phone. But I do that primarily. Some states are on a June 30th reporting cycle, so I'll be busy like in late May, early June. But most of the states are on a calendar year cycle, and so I get real busy between, say, September 15th and December 15th. That would be kind of my busy season. And I will have to say I primarily teach for state societies of CPAs. Every state has a state society of CPAs. But I also have firms that, like a big CPA firm will have me come in. And I guess I'm at the point now where I've done it long enough that I have people, I just get busier and busier because people ask for me. And I'd like it to be that I'm just so good that they call me, but I think I've discovered that some of my colleagues are retirement age, and maybe there's not as many of us doing it as there used to be, and maybe that's why I'm getting more phone calls. But I try to, make it fun, make it engaging. I have a lot of stories to tell from real life experience, and that makes the time go by quickly. So I really enjoy that, and cool. So I'm real busy in the fall.
That's just it. And you figure, so really it's almost like by the time the dust settles from the legislative session, you're gearing into what you're doing for a profession. Yes. And so that's why, because a lot of people are like, we haven't heard Kerry in a while. I'm like, he is just simply gone in too many different directions. So I was real tickled.
But let me back up a little bit too. And it's so important when people call and they've got a constituent issue, or they need to meet. Maybe it's like local government needs to meet over some state aid road issue or whatever. I've got to do that stuff. And so, by the time you fit that in, I've told this to people over and over again. The difference between running for office and being in office is this. When you're running for office, nobody invites you to anything. You just invite yourself, right? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Hey,
I know, exactly. And then once you're in office, everybody's like, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that. Can you come? Yeah. And, my district is almost 3,000 square miles. So let that sink in. Mm-hmm. So I've got 5 full counties plus part of Montgomery County. And so I'm somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 miles. And, a lot of my time is literally driving, and I'll add where there frequently is not cell phone service. So, and plus they're windy roads, so you don't need to be on the phone anyway. But when you go and do all these things, if I go to Waverly for a meeting, I mean, that pretty much takes up the whole day.
Oh, yeah.
So, now, none of that, though, should be construed as complaining. I do love the job. I enjoy it. And I'll segue right into, yes, I am running for re-election. It's funny how people read stuff into things that just absolutely, like blows my mind sometimes. So I'm on a 4-year election term. So this is my election cycle, 2026. The petitions that you could pick up to run for office were available after the Robertson County Republican Party had their meeting. So they had their meeting, I guess, whenever it was in January. And the following Monday, you could pick up your petition, which I did. So that's registered. I mean,
Right.
you can see that somebody picked up a petition. But you got to have signatures on that, and the group of people that would have just knocked it right out had just met the Saturday before, and they wouldn't meet until the first Saturday in February. And so I went towards the end of January. I went to a Cheatham County GOP meeting to get it signed, and there weren't enough people there to get the 25 signatures, so I just sat on it until the Robertson County Republican Party met again and got it knocked out, and then turned it in the following Monday. Well, people see that I'd pulled the petition, but I hadn't turned it back in, and they're like, is he running? Is he running? And I'm like, I'm just sitting here thinking, if you've got time to go knock on doors and say, here, would you sign my petition? Are you a registered voter, and would you sign my petition? It's just, I've got all these people in the room at one time. I just waited. And I've never done this before. I've never had multiple counties, and I just wasn't thinking. When they certify those results, the Robertson County folks can only do the Robertson County voters. Then they have to send it to Cheatham County to do the Cheatham County voters. And so then after everybody gets done with it and gets certified, then it goes to all 6 of the counties, and they have to upload it on the website. Well, 3 of the election administrators are new in those 6 counties, and it's still, it's still not all the way online yet, and so I'm still having to deal with, well, are you running or are you not? And it's like, yeah, it's all turned in. I'm just waiting for it to show up on the state website. So, yes, I will have my primary election in August.
Okay.
Now, our local stuff, its primaries in May, and its generals in August. But for the state stuff, like me, like Doc Kumar, like the next governor of Tennessee, that primary, our congressman, that primary will be in August, and then the general election will be in November.
Right.
So, so that's kind of the game plan, and whether I have an opponent or not, I'm prepared to run. We've got just, campaign money in the bank. We've got people ready to help, and we've done this a time or two, so we're pretty well, dialed in on, what we want to accomplish and how we want to accomplish it. So, so if anybody's wondering, you just heard it from the horse's mouth. Yes, I'm running. I'm sorry it's not on the state website yet, but and that's not, hey, and that's nobody's fault at the election office. It's just the way the calendar fell and made it. If I'd been able to pick that up Friday before that Saturday meeting, it would have been done the next Monday. Right. Yeah. And that's nobody's fault. It's just the way it is. So
yeah. So glad to hear it. Senator Kerry Roberts is running for re-election, primary in August. So be sure and support him in that. And
please,
absolutely. And
with sugar on it.
Help, let me know.
Thank you.
We don't get involved in the political. You're in office, so it's one thing to, but we try to, once, if there are,
just two separate, it's hard for people to, it's hard to separate that stuff, but as a legislator, I'll get invited to speak to groups, and there'll be Republicans and Democrats in that group. There'll be liberals and conservatives. There'll be people who love what we're doing, people who hate what we're doing, and you just have to navigate that in kind of a nonpartisan manner. You don't want to apologize for your policy or your votes or things like that, but you try not to make it overtly political. And the longer I've done this, probably, and maybe this isn't true, and maybe beauty is in the eyes of the beholder here, but I've tried to be less inflammatory. There are people who love the rhetoric. Mm-hmm. They love the bully pulpit.
Yes.
They want to hear you yell and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is most people are exhausted by that.
Yeah.
At this point, I think everybody, the prevailing feedback to me is I wish politicians would tone it down and just do the work.
Yeah.
Just do the work and don't make it. And this is not a Trump comment. This is politicians in general. Stop making it about you and focus on the work. And again, that's not directed at that's directed at me, not anybody else. Just don't make it about you. Focus on the work. And there's so much good work to be done. And there's work to be done that if you can keep a level head about it, there's a lot of work that can be done that still involves both sides of the aisle. Let me give you a great example. People just get outraged over the headlines about Department of Children's Services. Now, you talk about an issue that cuts across party lines. It would be people who have run afoul of DCS. And maybe they're in a bitter divorce, there's a custody fight, and some angry ex-mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother, sister, whatever, makes a referral to DCS, and somebody loses their kids until they find out that there's
nothing to it.
Yeah, nothing to it. Somebody makes a phone call about what a teacher does, and then they find out there's nothing to it, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to navigate through all that. Well, one of the areas that we have a lot of difficulty with in Tennessee is a lack of transparency. So, for example, I've got a bill that would require DCS to take all these facilities that they touch in some manner, and I'm not going to get in the weeds here, but that they put all these on a website so people can be aware of who they are and what, so they can learn more about them, right? So simple transparency. And that is people on the left, people on the right agree with that. So that's a great example. If you can work with both sides of the aisle, that's something that will benefit everyone in Tennessee. Here's another one. There is no entity that inspects juvenile, we used to call them juvie jails. Now we talk about their hardware secure, they're not, they're pre-adjudication, they're post-adjudication, all this kind of lingo. But the bottom line is these are juvenile jails, and no one is consistently inspecting them except for maybe DCS, but they're not really independent. So Tennessee Corrections Institute inspects all of our jails across Tennessee. So Robertson County Jail, because we want people to be treated correctly. They are incarcerated, I understand that. But the goal is for them to serve their time, get out, and not do it again,
and
right?
Return to
right. I mean, because
society.
95% of the people who are incarcerated are going to live and work among us someday. Mm-hmm. And so the goal is not to put them in jail to teach them how to be a better criminal. It's to put them in jail to teach them how to be a better person, and so on. So TCI goes around with over 400 points of emphasis when they go into a county or city jail to help them do better at what they do. Now, initially, it was kind of adversarial. It's like the auditor showing up. But eventually, I think people figured out, no, these people are trying to help us stay in compliance with federal law, with state law, and to run, from a taxpayer standpoint, run our jails with more efficiency, more effectiveness, and so on. And again, the goal is for people not to have to go back. There's no sister organization that does that for the juvenile facilities. there's no one like Tennessee Correction Institute that goes in and looks at the juvenile facilities. They're on their own. And that's why you read these horror story reports or you see these lawsuits, about kids that just got put in solitary confinement for 30 days. Can you imagine being a 16-year-old and just being, and I mean, and there are some, 16-year-olds that have done some terrible things. I'm not, don't want to minimize that, but the vast majority of people who are incarcerated, juvenile or otherwise, this is the story you get. Man, if I could take back 10 minutes of my life, that's it.
Yeah.
And so
horrible mistake.
Yeah, and so we leave it to our judges to adjudicate that and decide what the appropriate, debt to society is, so to speak. But the goal ought to be that they come out a better person. They don't go back. And so we have a lot of there's a lot of work to be done there, but it's not particularly glamorous. And there's still a prevailing attitude that if you go to jail, like me when I first got elected, my position was, if you get sent to jail, have fun busting big rocks into little rocks, so you'll never want to go back again. That was the attitude I had. And then what I discovered is we've done it that way for years, and it doesn't work. It just talk about making someone a hardened, criminal. That was it. Yeah. So did I get soft on crime? No. People that go to crime ought to go to jail. Do I think someone who kills someone ought to be, subject to the death penalty? Yes, I do. But the reality of it is a lot of people go for 5 years, 10 years or something like that, and they come back and they get out, and we're going to interact with these people, and they're going to be the people that maybe come and work on our house and do something on our house, or maybe we're going to go into a business and they service there or whatever. And I would like it to be someone that doesn't ever want to go back, that says, hey, I learned my lesson. I don't want to go back. So anyway, that's one small area of many. And I just give that as an example that that's something that both the left and the right agree on. And if you can keep the personality conflicts out of it, it's amazing what you can get done. What do coaches say all the time? When you don't care who gets the credit, it's amazing what you can get done.
Yeah. Well, Reagan said that. Reagan was famously quoted for that as well.
Well, I was going to say it was like Bear Bryant or someone like that, but that's, I guess if you're in Alabama, he's right up there with Reagan. So, it's amazing what you can do when you don't care who gets the credit, when you keep the egos out of it. And we'll just say it's amazing when you think in terms of being self-giving versus self-serving, what you can accomplish and what can happen. And I know you're going to need to take a break, but that's Pastor Bobby, who we've talked about a lot. That's his month of February. I don't know if have you had a chance to listen to him yet?
I've listened to yesterday's sermon.
Phenomenal.
Actually, we went to Huntsville, Alabama to sit. Our baby turned 30 on Friday, our youngest. It just blows my mind. About to have my 5th grandchild. I'm telling you, life is just clicking. On the way back, we listened to Bobby's lesson.
Well,
and,
the week before was the week before was even better. But
okay, I'll go
Diane made the comment. This may have been the best series that he's done, but
the Love Month.
So for the uninitiated, this is Pastor Bobby Davis. Mm-hmm. By the way, not to be confused with Maury Davis, who's no relation. That was at Cornerstone for many, many years, and but this is Bobby Davis, Cookeville, Tennessee, Life Church, and our 2 of our 3 live in Cookeville, and that's where they go to church. But we enjoy listening to him. You know what somebody somewhere needs to do, and if you listen to Bobby Davis, this is like an inside joke. So if people have never heard him and don't know who he is, they're going to totally think this is stupid. Somebody really ought to do a rap album. You know what I mean?
of all the little things he says, because he's such a country boy. And
He
he's
is
so
the
real.
rhymer. He rhymes like
Yes.
I mean, it's like you just sit there amazed.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
it's like, man, you missed your calling. You should have been a rapper.
Yeah,
He can rhyme like
can.
just and
Yeah.
apparently he's just does it on the fly.
Mhm.
And well, you know, his son made a comment about it one point in time, and I gathered from that comment that it just comes natural to him.
Yeah, it's
But
really funny.
I have never heard anyone do more rhyming, and I'm frequently trying to scribble that down. It's like, oh, that's good. I got to write that down, but I can't keep up with him. He goes
So
too fast.
much.
So, but his you know, February was Love Month, and he's talking about love versus lust, and the acronym that he uses for lust is living under Satan's tactics.
Mhm.
And a key principle of it was, you know, hey, what are we doing? Are we living for ourselves, or are we living for other people? And I brought, you know, because we periodically talk about the books I read, brought this book by N.T. Wright, entitled Surprised by Hope. And you know, one of the themes that N.T. Wright has is, are we self-giving or are we self-serving? And it's funny because you know, this guy's British, you know, and he's the, you know, Church of England, so he's Anglican, or at least formerly. I don't know what he is now, but you know, here Bobby is evangelical, and yet they're both saying the same thing. You're never going to be happy if what you're trying to do is to serve yourself or to find happiness or to acquire, you know, happiness. You're only going to be happy when you serve others, give to others. You know, I think about probably just my own life. And my mom, oh, if I heard it once, I heard it about 1,000 times. It's like, you know, happiness is between your ears. And she was quoting somebody else, and, you know, you're about as happy as you make up your mind to be. Well, that's sort of true, but it's not entirely true. Your fulfillment comes, your happiness comes when you serve other people. And all these people that I run into who are not happy, there's just like a, I don't know if it's a touch of narcissism or if it's, but it's just kind of a poor, pitiful me, kind of a self-centered. And Bobby tells a story, it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, or this would be now 2 Sundays ago or 3 Sundays ago. He tells a story about this young woman that was just miserable all the time. And I get this. There's some people you just like, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time for that right now.
You see him coming across
I know.
church, and you're
So
like,
he's leaving the parking lot. You know, this is when he was in college ministry, so years ago. He's headed to his car, and she calls out to him, stops him, and he's just like, whatever. And he said it'd been a long day. It had been a hard day. And I'm probably butchering the story here a little bit, but he just basically said, I didn't have any patience for her, and I just let her have it.
oh,
And he said, I just told her, you know, we serve the same God. We live in the same town. We go to the same church. We do this. We do that. All these things that we have in common that he just keeps naming. And yet, I'm really pretty happy, and you're not. You know,
what's the problem?
could it be you?
Yeah.
Could it be, you know? And he said, I didn't really hold back. And you know, I wish I wish a gift that you could sometimes give people would be just in the middle of their poor, pitiful me, just the joy and the opportunity to do something for somebody else.
Yep.
And I'll go one step further. You know, maybe doing something for someone else, it's hard for you to take time and do it. Okay, try this. Get out your checkbook and write a check and bless somebody else. You know, write a check.
Tip that waiter
give them
extra.
That's right.
Because you never know what's going on with them.
I tell you, Diane and I have, yes, ever since Nora worked at the depot, we have had, we've always, pretty much been 20% tippers, and which I guess is probably, I just assume it's kind of the norm. But, sometimes you're going and eating lunch, and, 20% is $2 and, $2.
Yeah.
And make it $5.
Yeah.
And I think, since we're not consumers of alcohol, of course, if you're a server and they sit there and drink all dinner, you have a really big bill and you might get a bigger tip. But, bless the hearts of people who serve Diane and me. When you go order 2 salads and water, it's not a big bill.
It's not a big tab.
It's not, but, we have taken to doing that. But, when you talk about blessing somebody's life, I mean, there are people that if you just think about it, anybody who has experienced a loss, anyone who's had an addition to their family, anyone who's lost a job, anyone who you didn't know about them losing a job, but you knew that they searched for a job for 5 or 6 months and finally found one. I mean, you can just put your thinking cap on, and you could probably think of someone who could use an extra $100.
Yeah.
And or maybe if you're in a position where you've got some extra zeros in your bank account, maybe it's $1,000. But so maybe it's individual, maybe it's Open Door Pregnancy Resource Center, and
having their big gala next Monday.
Yes, and we'll be there, and I have to be on the Senate floor that Monday night. But the second we are done, we are going to jet up here to leave the Capitol and get to the center as quickly as possible. And so there's so many ways to sort of get out of yourself and bless other people. And by the way, this book, what I love about this book is, what do you think of when you think about heaven?
Just joy, Jesus.
Okay, but what do you think most people think of?
They think about some big bearded, creator sitting on a cloud and all that, I suppose.
Clouds, cherubs, harps, and disembodied. Disembodied, some kind of spirit that you don't really know what it is. And I remember when I was a kid, one of my best friends when I was a kid was Greg Brown. And Greg, we'd bring him to Belpre Church of Christ when we were kids, and in Belpre, Ohio, and our Bible class teacher was the fire chief, and don't remember his name, but I just remember as an aside, he smoked.
Oh, okay.
Now this is not the South, okay? This is not the South.
This is back in the day.
This is not dark-fired tobacco country where the Church of Christ lets out and all the men goes outside and has a cigarette, right? Yeah. So this is Ohio, and Williams, his name was Williams, Captain Williams, and he smoked, and of course his rationale for smoking was he was a fireman, so his lungs were already toast.
Yeah. It's like,
anyway, Greg said Greg loved to fish.
Mm-hmm.
As a boy, he just loved to fish, and that was his passion. And he asked Mr. Williams one time, he said, "Why would I want to go to heaven if there's no fishing?"
Mm.
And I would today, if Greg Brown asked me that question, I would say, "Well, Greg, why do you think there's not going to be any fishing?"
Yeah.
Because, if Scripture is clear about one thing, this whole disembodied spirit stuff is sort of a misunderstanding, I think, of Scripture. But, Scripture makes it very clear that there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth.
Mm-hmm.
And this notion that we're going to, rise up and meet Jesus is really no different than than think about what's it like when Grandpa and Grandma pull into the driveway, what do the grandkids do?
Run out.
Rush out to greet them, right?
Exact same
So,
concept.
but are they going to come back in the house? Yes, they are. They're not going to stay out in the car.
Yeah.
And I think the idea is sometimes we get caught up, but in Revelation it talks about the new Jerusalem and the new heaven, the new earth. So I without getting into the whole theology of it, I do think that God redeems things. That is the nature of God. God redeems things. So I think this earth is going to be redeemed. What does it look like? I don't know. What do I look like? I don't know. Are you LaVern? Am I Kerry? Yes, I believe that'll continue to be. And will I know you and you know me? I think so. Will we, whatever it is that you enjoy doing, will you continue to do that? There's a good chance of that. I mean, I love riding my bicycle. I mean, I've come to the conclusion, and you may think I'm silly, that we'll ride bikes if we want to. And
I'm the same way. And yeah,
well,
I agree with you.
Look, he doesn't. The key thing for him in this book, it's very theological and intellectual. The point is that when Jesus, first of all, his point is that Jesus absolutely resurrected from the dead. And if you can't buy into that, stop wasting your time.
Yeah.
It was a literal event
Yeah.
that is a foretaste of the fact that we're going to be resurrected as well someday, and that God's kingdom has come just as Jesus prayed, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so he's basically saying, here we are, we're between the first resurrection and our resurrection. We're between the first creation and the redeemed creation. What are we doing with it? What does the kingdom of heaven look like for us? And this was not an easy read. I mean, this is written by a guy who's an intellectual.
Yeah, I've had that recommended to me a couple of times.
Yeah,
So I
it's
may
very
have
good.
to get it on Audible. I'm one of those. I don't know if, of course, it might be so heady. I'll be like.
But you know what? But how cool would it be if he was the one who read it and you would get his British accent? And
I'll have to check that
but
out.
it is kind of
I've had
funny
it
because
recommended many times. So I'm gonna have to look
yeah,
into it.
and he'll use some the way he says things are decidedly British, and you go, wait a minute, what does he mean by that? Because he'll use little expressions that maybe we're not familiar with. But if you can see it, Surprised by Hope, N.T. Wright, highly recommend it. Another book, if you're interested, is Randy Alcorn's book on heaven. Yeah,
I actually taught a class on that at Madison.
Great book. Yeah, awesome
years
book.
ago.
Yeah, and Alcorn quotes N.T. Wright some, and that's kind of what got me turned on to this, is because a couple of places in his book he quotes Wright. So, but it is kind of interesting because we're here in America, the evangelical movement is so strong that we forget sometimes that some of our greatest influences theologically, C.S. Lewis, for example, they didn't come from America,
No.
and they had that Anglican background, and you think about Martin Luther and the Reformation. So a lot of what we know about our faith has been influenced by people from Western Europe, and so it's really good. I enjoyed reading it, and and I would say this to people, and I tell people who listen, this doesn't replace reading the Bible.
Of course not.
Yeah, and so maybe your pattern is you read the Bible in the morning, and maybe you read something like this before you go to bed, but. And by the way, I'll say one more thing about reading the Bible. Did you ever get, you remember the story? Do you remember the story?
Oh, yeah.
Zondervan or someone came
I've
out
got
with,
that,
So if for people who aren't familiar with it, it's, they took the Bible, and this was a little bit controversial at the time because some people were upset about it. But what they did was it was kind of like, they did for the Bible kind of like what you'll see with the harmony of the Gospels, where they try to take the stories of all four Gospels and try and put them in chronological order. Well, they did that with the Bible, which means they also left out duplication. And then some of the lengthy things that you kind of wonder why they did it. They just left it out so that they could focus on the story of God's relationship with mankind. And so they call it the story. So they say, look, we're not trying to be the Bible. We're just trying to take things out of the Bible that tell the story of God, and we're putting it in a chronological book. And I saw that the other day on my bookshelf. I bet would that have been done 40 years ago, 30 or 40 years ago?
Maybe.
Probably the 90s. Probably the 90s.
So, and it happens again. I mean, you have other, just look what The Chosen's doing. The Chosen's doing the same thing. Bear Grylls just came out with one, and he's another British dude who's just a really outspoken Christian. I don't know if you knew this or not, but he's like this British adventurer, and I think he was in military there.
I thought isn't he a singer?
Bear Grylls?
Is he not a singer?
He's like this big adventure guy. This dude.
Oh no, that's not who I'm thinking of. Yeah.
He is somebody that he's done a lot of television, a lot of like survivalist stuff. Oh, my husband follows him, and so he's pretty popular in.
So what did he do?
He wrote a book that is about, I'm trying to think what the name of it is. I actually have it on Audible, and I just kind of stumbled across it. He does a documentary on the mosaic floor that they found in a prison over in Israel that is very early church that talks about, I mean, it's just, the things they're digging up out of the dirt in Israel right now because they started digging underneath. That's what it is, profound. And so much of this stuff was happening. It was just starting to get released right before COVID, and that shut everything down in Israel. And then they were starting to push it out, and everything's going to start opening up. And then they were attacked, the October 7th attack, and they've been at war. And I mean, so it's been kind of, people don't really realize what's happening, but because it's the pilgrimage road is kind of, I don't know if you know about this stuff, but anyway, there's so much happening in Israel with archaeology. But Bear Grylls, he does a piece where they were digging in a maximum security prison or doing some kind of renovation, and they found a mosaic floor that talks about Christ very, very early on, in the early church. And so he does that documentary. But this book, he is a very outspoken Christian, and he's actually from Ireland. Okay. But I'm wanting to say he was like a special forces soldier at some point. But my kids and my husband have always followed him and watched him. The Greatest Story Ever Told is the book he put out. And it's basically the same thing, kind of like a story. And so it's one of those things, because I like him, I downloaded it. Because anybody that has a public persona and they're outspoken about their faith, I love all these athletes that are, declaring Christ now. Okay. And I just love it.
All right. So, okay, folks listening, LaVern is the self-professed, I don't really know what's going on in college sports person. Okay, so we already had this conversation. So I came in, I said, here I am with my UT thing, but my Indiana Hoosiers, so I'm, because I am from Bloomington, Indiana, won the national championship.
Congratulations.
And the phenomenal thing about that is their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, every interview, all glory to God.
Praise the Lord.
That's
awesome.
And I told Diane, I said, you know what? We're seeing the fruit of Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Yes.
Years and years and years of getting these former athletes involved with these young people and influencing these young people in the amount of prayer and things like that. And is it, of course, the cynics are like, oh, you think God takes sides, or God would. So you're sitting here telling me that God would flip the outcome of a football game while you got kids starving, and just the cynics will come up with anything. Oh, yeah. But what does Scripture tell us? Whatever you do for the glory of God. And so here, this Bear guy, you're sitting here saying he's an outspoken Christian. I mean, wouldn't you love? What is wrong with us? We've got the greatest story, right, ever told. Mm-hmm. We answer the question of why we're here, what we're doing, what we should be about. We answer the question, to some extent, of what happens when we die. And then we've sit here and we've allowed ourselves to be silenced into complete ineffectiveness because some mouthpieces out there hate us, and in their given platform. And I was thinking about how many people. I was reading somebody's website the other day, and they were talking about their DEI policy and their inclusivity policy and zero tolerance policy. And I thought, and yet you're a Christian. And so what should your zero tolerance be? What does the book say? What does the Word of God say? What is it clear that the will of God is? And yet that's not what you're all about from a zero tolerance standpoint. You're about the teachings of men. So anyway, it's I'll have to look this guy up to finish up with that. And if you've not had a chance, pay attention, because when the NFL draft comes up in April, Fernando Mendoza will be, if not the first pick. And this is really cool. I got to tell you something. You won't care about this, but maybe somebody will. Maybe somebody listening will think this is so cool.
I watch the sports guys talk about God, but I don't know who they are.
Okay. Well, they're having the NFL Combine right now.
Okay.
Right. So if you're an aspiring, you want to get drafted.
Right.
So they've invited 300 some college players to the Combine. It's in Indianapolis, and I don't really care about the NFL. And the only reason I know it's 300 some is because Diane and I were talking about last night, and I looked it up. But 300 some players get invited to the Combine. And so what do they do at the Combine? They measure, and you had a kid play college football, so you get this. How tall are you really, right? How much do you weigh, really? What can you bench press, really? How high can you jump? How fast can you run? All this other kind of stuff. And they put them through skills drills as well. And so it's a chance to get past the hype and see what these kids really have.
Yeah.
So Mendoza is invited to the Combine, and he's going to get measured, poked, prodded, everything else. But here's what he's not going to do. He is not going to throw the football at the Combine.
Okay.
So here he is. Some people say he's going to be the number 1 draft pick. You know why he's not doing it at the Combine?
Why?
Because IU, Indiana University, is going to have a pro day on April 1st. And he is only going to throw the ball on April 1st because of the seniors and juniors on his team that didn't get invited to the Combine. He wants to be able to show them off.
Really?
How cool is that?
That's amazing.
And it's not an arrogant thing on his part. I'm sure that he's got so much humility that I'm sure that they were planning this pro day anyway, but he's saving it for them so that these other players can get showcased.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
What a guy.
And yeah.
And if, and people talk about, well, do you think God's playing favorites and all that in sports? But that's not the point.
That's not the point. It's you're being the best.
You just give God the glory for
you being an image bearer.
You to do.
That's right.
Be an image
bearer. Yeah. You're reflecting the image.
Before the game, it's not like, oh, please let me win. It's like, God, let you be glorified.
When
be glorified with what I'm doing.
I catch myself,
it's so cool.
When I catch myself wanting to pray for a score, an outcome, I just catch myself. I laugh and I say, you know what? Just pray for them to be the best that they can be, and to give God the glory, and leave it at that. And whatever the score is, the score is. But it is kind of tempting. Okay, at some point before we get done here, you have to do an ad, and we need to talk about legislation. Me being a legislator. So you do your ad, and then we'll talk about the General Assembly.
Okay, a couple of things. Just John Christ. You need to look up him.
Okay.
He talks about things you shouldn't pray for. You'll like him.
Okay.
And what you were talking about, how we've got to be that image bearer. Remember the famous quote by Penn Teller talking about how a guy came up and apologized for giving him a note and a Bible saying, I know you probably won't want this. He's like, if you've got the answer to eternal life, how dare you not tell me? Because he knows he's a famous atheist. Just several things that you mentioned, things I want to think about. So look up that quote by Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller, and you need to look up John Christ, things you shouldn't pray for. And do you know we can now teach Bible in
Yeah.
our schools. And so that's another thing too that I kind of want to bring, but I do have to do an ad and you got to talk about legislation. We could talk for a couple of hours. It's been a minute. We are going to talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards right now with Exit Prime Realty. We were talking about the Open Door Pregnancy and Resource Center dinner, the big gala that's coming up next Monday night. They'll be there, and I get to set the table with them. And Catherine will be there as well. She and Barry are part of what they're doing to bring you the video presentation for telling the stories there. Barry is an expert at media marketing and all of those things. He was a vice president of a media marketing company for 17 years. He brings that expertise to help out things like the Open Door Pregnancy and Resource Center and so many things in the community. But he brings that expertise, too, to make sure your property is sold in the absolute best light for the top dollar that you can get, because everything, the videography, the photography, drone footage, all those things are going to be absolutely perfect. As a matter of fact, if you go and pull up Rebecca's page right now, there's a beautiful home that has been listed in Cross Plains. It's a new construction, really nice place. It's got some acreage, got a couple of acres, and it's priced below the appraisal. They're ready to get this thing moving. It's got 3 bedrooms and 3 full baths, and the photography is beautiful on it because I guarantee you Barry took care of it. But that just gives you an idea of what they can do. If you go to their Facebook page, their website, you just Google, Barry says just Google them. Barry Richards, Exit Prime Realty, Rebecca Richards, Exit Prime Realty. You'll find all the things you need to know about them, and it will put you in touch with the properties that they're listing. If you're wanting somebody to represent you on a sale, it'll tell you how to get in touch with them for that. And, of course, if you want to be a realtor, they would love to mentor you and help you out. They are part of the Exit group. They've been with Exit team ever since the beginning when Rebecca decided to do this full time. She joined the Garden Gate team. Barry's been helping her out for many, many years. Finally went full time about 5-6 years ago. Time goes so quick. But they brought you a new branch in the Exit tree a few years ago, and they are now Exit Prime Realty, which encompass the office he has here as a broker here in Springfield, her White House agency office. They brought those two together to bring you Exit Prime Realty. They are the whole package, everything you need, buying, selling. If you want to be a realtor, whatever it is, reach out to them today. You can call Rebecca at 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425, or 7424. And you can go to sellwithbecky.com, sellwithbecky.com, or buy, BUY, robertsoncounty.com. But always, please let them know U-Turn sent ya. We've got right at about 10 minutes now. Senator Kerry Roberts, talk to me about what's happening in the state legislature.
So we'll make that 9 minutes, and I have to leave at 8. So we're in session right now, and here's what that means. So the legislative session, we're in the 114th General Assembly. So Tennessee became a state in 1796. Originally, the General Assembly did not meet every year, but nowadays we do. So we start it in 1 year from January to the end of April, and then we finish it the next year, January to April. Now, we said earlier that technically it's a part-time job because in theory, you stop what you're doing and you take 4 months out of your life and you go deal with that. The problem is most people don't know January to the end of April. And now that we have cell phones, email, you're likely to hear from someone at 2 a.m.
all the time
who's upset about something, and you don't really have much choice but to stop what you're doing and respond to them, or they will go on social media and berate you as uncaring or insensitive or whatever it might be. So it truly is a full-time job, but focusing on the January to the end of April. We go in on Mondays. So when I say we go in on Mondays, people are coming from across the state. There are 33 senators, 99 House members, and so they drive in on Monday. So that can be a 5-hour drive if you're all the way at Kingsport, plus you got to deal with the time change. and if you're coming from Memphis, wherever. And so people drive on Mondays. You get into your office on Monday, generally after lunch, and you just start having meetings with people. You try to, maybe it's staff meetings, maybe you're working on the legislation that you're trying to do. And then for us, on Monday evening, we go to the Senate floor at 4 o'clock, and we're just there until we're done. Early in session, we could be done by 5:30 or 6. Late in session, we'll be there till 10 o'clock at night. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays, those are the committee days. So on Tuesdays, I have 2 committees. On Wednesday, I have 1. Those are also the days that people pick for their day on the Hill. So on any given Tuesday or Wednesday, it'll be this group, that group, the other group with their day on the Hill. So it could be realtors, it could be bankers, it could be veterinarians, it could be nurse anesthetists, it could be polysomnographists, it could be teachers, it could be anyone that's got some kind of interest in what's going on. They have a day on the Hill. They try to get constituents for each legislator to show up. So they try to get their members to show up, and then they want to come around and meet with their legislator and talk about what's on their agenda. So, for example, last week we had the electrical co-op day on the Hill. So it was good to see all our friends from CEMC, and then also I've got Meriwether Lewis in part of my district, and to have everybody come by and just say, here's what we experienced during the electrical storm or the ice storm.
Yeah.
And of course, let me just say, CEMC, Meriwether Lewis, Dixon Electric, all of these in my district did a fabulous job. And there were people, and this is what people have to understand. It's like the 80-20 rule. You can restore 80% of the power in 20% of the time, but getting that last person restored who's kind of at the end of the line, you have to do it sequentially. Yeah. There's no other way to do it. You can't just go to their house and fix it. You've got to figure out why the power is not getting to their house, and you got to fix it from here to there, and it has to be done sequentially. So there were people who had to wait and wait and wait, and my heart went out to them, but they kind of lived at the end of the line, so to speak, and that may not be obvious like a map. Well, I don't live at the end of the road. I don't live at a cul-de-sac. I don't live out in the middle of nowhere, but if you look at the way the energy's transmitted, they were. And that was problematic. And by the way, TDOT, our county, Robertson County Highway Department, they all did a great job. But it's just for people who are frustrated, I know. But this was a lifetime experience. I mean, this is once in a decade's experience, and they just don't have. Do we really? Here's the thing, from a taxpayer, and people get this when you say it to them, taxpayers. Do you really want Robertson County to stock up on all of the equipment that, say, Minneapolis has or someplace in Canada has, that'll just sit there and, rust and rot unused just in case we might have a once-in-a-lifetime event? Mm-hmm. And so we're very blessed that we don't typically have to deal with this stuff, but then when we do, it's hard because they do, they've got plows that they put on these trucks and things like that, but there's only so many of them. And then on top of that, typically we have a deep freeze for a day or two and then it warms up. This stayed cold for a week. So all the brine solution chemicals that they use are just not effective when it gets that cold. And when you have snow and then freezing rain and snow and freezing, I mean, I don't know about you, but we had probably 3 inches of ice on our, on our parking pad and outside, there at our driveway. And, it just, you really can't.
Nothing you can do with it.
Except wait for the sun to come out. Yeah. And so we got a lot of calls from people who are frustrated, and I mean, my heart went out to them, but there's only so much you can do.
Right.
And so people did have to wait. But overall, the response was really phenomenal. And to our hardworking CEMC employees, to our hardworking, Springfield Electric and all of our city and county workers, I just think they did an amazing job. And I tell you what, I think it's even more amazing that you've got these people out working on, cutting back trees and poles and things like that. And the fact that their big trucks didn't get stuck. And I didn't know this, but all those big trucks that CEMC has, they're all 4-wheel drive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I just figured but he said,
they had to be.
Oh, he said, these things are like tanks. I said, do you guys get stuck anywhere? And he said, we did have, a couple that got on ice and you just can't do anything with that.
Yeah.
And, but for the most part, it's just great response. We're very, and let me just say, CEMC, it's a co-op, right? We all own it, okay, so to speak. But all the people that work there, they're our neighbors, they're our friends.
Yes.
And so, when we're at home, trying to keep warm because it's 0 degrees outside.
Freezing.
This is your neighbor. This is the guy that lives up the street. This is the person you go to church with. And they're out there in some pretty treacherous conditions trying to deal with things. And so it's I know we all got frustrated. We're very spoiled with our power, but it flickers and goes off for 5 minutes, and we're all upset. I will laugh and say this: those of you that are on gas, Springfield Gas, we put gas throughout a lot, or you're on propane.
I have a lot of gas appliances.
Yeah, so think about a generator, and I know it's kind of spendy, but you can take that generator, and it's fired by natural gas, and you can you can get through it. I had to laugh. All these people that do construction have fireplaces. It's like, we didn't get gas logs because we wanted to save the money. And I'm thinking, all 3 of our Airbnbs have gas log fireplaces in them, and we have gas log fireplaces in our house as well.
You too.
And of course, our house is so old. It was built in the 1860s. We got 14-foot ceilings. It's hard to get warm in there. And, like you think about our floors, like some of our floors are the original floors. So there's planking underneath the flooring, but there's no insulation and stuff. That's what you got rugs for. Rugs will keep those drafts out. So we frequently have our fireplaces on anyway. Yeah. And, but yeah, I thought, if I was building, I told my son, if you build new construction, make sure that you get gas. It's cheaper to do it up front and get it built in, so you can do, even if it's propane, you can have gas logs in case you need. Hey, we're out of time.
We're completely out of time.
I gotta run.
And you got to go. Senator Kerry Roberts, thank you. And hopefully
we'll see
we can hit you
next month. Yeah, and I'm done with teaching for a bit, so we should be able to be back next month, and we'll spend a little bit more time talking about. We haven't really voted on a lot of stuff yet since we're early on, but next month we'll have a lot to talk about.
We'll hit it. Yeah. And I'll see you at the Open Door Pregnancy and Resource Center.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thank you guys for joining us. And about the Open Door, you need to call them if you want to go, because I was talking to Sean over the weekend, and she said they're at capacity. They're getting at capacity real quick. So if you want to go, you need to talk to them, give them a phone call, and they'll see what they can do. But they are just so blessed to have so many people coming, and they want you there, but you need to call them because they are getting full very fast, and that's a week from tonight. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it's coming up super fast. Thank you guys for joining us. Now, remember, too, because of President's Day, County Commissioner meeting was rescheduled from last week to tonight. So County Commissioner meetings happening tonight. So that means County Mayor Billy Vogel is scheduled to be in tomorrow. So we'll be reaching out to him to make sure he can do that for us. But that is the plan, to see County Mayor Vogel in here tomorrow, and I hope you'll be a part of it. This is 1100 WSGI. God bless you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And yeah, it was snowing this morning, but nothing too serious. God bless.